and then we can start the show. Because that will go well, too.
Hey, we are live.
Hey, everybody.
Quick share on Facebook. Get the utilities out of the way. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us or watching later. We're about to record an episode of The Topic is Trek, which is our podcast all about the Blair Witch Project.
Yes. No. Yeah. Maybe I missed a meeting, obviously. I'm behind.
Well, the name implies what it's about. I never give the right answer to that when people say, which podcast do you have? I say I have 3 right now. They go, oh, which ones? And then I get to the Topic is Trek. It says, and you can guess as the name implies, it's all about Dolly Parton.
and they look like,
just keep changing the answer.
There he goes again. Oh, sorry, not the rest of that song either. I'm not going to do that.
Change back to my profile. When I go to a page that I manage, I don't want to go to the owner. It's like, and now I'm back to my personal page. No, that's not quite how it goes.
And they're really proud of that they did all this too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm on the Topic is Trek page as me. Oh, good.
Wait, what? I'm sorry. I go to Facebook and the first thing I see is Night Court back in session this January with 2-episode premiere.
With Harry.
Well, Harry passed away.
Yeah, I was going to say that'd be a little tough.
The only person in this photo that's an original cast member is John Larroquette. That's it.
Ooh, he's got to be getting quite old.
Well, he's got solid white hair and a solid white beard.
How old is John Larroquette? There it is. 74.
So I'm wondering if he is. I wonder if he's the judge. You know, he might be the judge in this new version.
Oh, his birthday's coming up on November 25th.
Ah, happy birthday, John.
Okay, we have a different show to talk about tonight, though.
Right, it's not called The Topic is Night Court.
I miss Harry.
Me too.
All right, then I'll do the countdown, and we can start this show on the left foot, right foot, whatever foot it is. In 5, 4, 3, 2.
This is The Topic is Trek, episode 127 for Friday, November 11th, 2022. Coming up in this episode, Picard says everything must go. We visit some very strange new worlds. Prodigy is up for a major award, and it's not a lamp. All that and more right now on The Topic is Trek. Fire folks gone torpedoes. Welcome to The Topic is Trek, the podcast that runs on impulse power. Join us for a journey where no show has gone before. If it has to do with Star Trek, there's a good chance we'll talk about it. Sooner or later, because on this show, the topic is Trek. Engage already. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Clinton, and welcome to another thrill-packed episode of The Topic is Trek, the show where we talk about we've talked about Night Court and Dolly Parton, all sorts of things getting ready to do the show. But no, really, the topic is Star Trek, in case there was any question about that. And I can't be a co-host without having other hosts. That makes sense, right? So beaming in to join me is Mr. Chuck Tomasi.
I borrowed the cool transporter from the Klingons.
Yeah, I was going to say, wow, we've upgraded here.
Craig can have the old-fashioned TOS one. I got the Klingon transporter.
That's kind of the hand crank version when you compare it to that one. And unfortunately, speaking
It's
of,
so dark in here. It's always dark in Klingon ships. You ever notice that?
I did. They must have really good eyesight, or they just bump into things a lot, and that's how they got the ridges from just bumping into
Oh,
things because
that
they
sounds
won't
like
turn
a
on a light.
racist remark.
What? That they hit their heads?
Is it a racist remark if it's a fictional race?
I don't know. Those are questions to ponder. But this is not the topic is pondering. This is the topic is Trek. Unfortunately, our other co-host, Mr. Craig Stepp, has just lost a dear friend and is taking some time away from the microphone for this episode. Our deepest sympathies go out to Craig and the family of Craig's friend.
Yes, absolutely. It's very sad when someone close to you passes away.
Indeed, indeed. So we will try to cheer up the room by talking about all things Trek. And of course, the best way I know how to cheer myself up is to force myself to ask Charlie X. I mean, last episode, if you were listening, we had a very special guest person in, and that can happen again, Charlie. So let me ask you, are we set for subspace chatter?
You don't need all that subspace chatter.
Okay, there we go.
He's back.
I'm going to look into some more special guests. I'm just saying.
Well, story number one, hot on the heels of Strange New Worlds winning a Saturn Award for Best Streaming Sci-Fi Series, the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences have announced the nominations for the first annual Children and Family Emmy Awards. These awards are the first standalone expansion of the Emmy Award competition since 1979. Yikes. There are 50 categories that are being awarded for various achievements. Prodigy will be competing at the highest level in the Outstanding Animated Series category. Its competition will be City of Ghosts, The Cuphead Show, and A Tale Dark and Grim, all from Netflix. And The Proud Family, Louder and Prouder from Disney+. The awards will be presented on Saturday, December 10th and Sunday, December 11th at the Wilshire Ebel Theater in Los Angeles. Go Prodigy!
Yeah, so my assumption is that if it's the category is, like best animated series, it's not going to be in the creative arts one. It's going to be in the main announcements on Sunday, December 11th. So we will keep an eye out for that one. I've only seen one of the other nominees. I have seen the Cuphead show, but I'm not familiar with the other shows. Have you watched any of these other?
None of those ring a bell with me. The closest I got was A Tale Dark and Grim. It's like, I watched Grim. Oh, not that. Grim.
No, it's not. No, not the same thing at all. Well, so we'll keep you informed on that when we hear whether or not Prodigy is won, and clearly it should. But anyway, next story is Slash Film has posted a Star Trek beginner's guide. It offers suggestions on where to start watching the franchise. So you've never seen Trek before, and you want to dive in because you've this got a long storied 56-year history going on here. So they recommend not starting with TOS, since it's visually and tonally different from Trek in 2022. And certainly it is. If you were to look at the original series, which even after The Next Generation started, was referred to as, well, that cheesy kind of sets on there. So they say, okay, so don't start with that. Don't start with any of the series pilot episodes. And I think that's a good one, good rule to live by.
Yeah.
A lot of the pilots are just kind of, well, it's going to take them a season to get their legs on the show. They also say stay away from the most popular episodes, such as Mirror Mirror and The Best of Both Worlds. All right, so we could go on and on about all the things you shouldn't start with, but why don't you go ahead? Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read the article for yourself and find out what they suggest? And you can find a link to the article in the show notes for episode 127 over at thetopicistrek.com.
Oh, you tease.
I know.
If you were writing this article, I assume you probably read it already, but if you were writing, where would you suggest one begins?
Well, I understand the point about not starting with TOS. I feel like everything else kind of shoots off of that, which makes it a tough thing not to do. So I would say do the second best thing and start off with the Next Generation, because you need to have, I think you need to have something that you're gonna understand the references.
Yeah.
And if you skip Next Generation as well and go straight to, say, like Deep Space Nine, well, that's like an offshoot type of aspect of Trek of that era. So it's setting the wrong tone for what the other shows are going to be like.
Yeah, lots of references. Yeah, at first I thought, well, Prodigy, because they stop and explain things like the difference between the Federation and Starfleet. But even there, you still have lots of back references. Who's Janeway? Why is she there? That kind of thing.
Right. So I that's my best. What about you? What would you think would be the place to start?
I would agree. It's got to be TNG, but I can't like quite nail down specifics. It would probably be in the second season.
Mhm.
Because a lot of hey, if you watch the first season, then you don't need to watch some of the TOS episodes.
That's right. And you don't even have to wonder, well, who is Tashi Yar? You've never seen her. But then all of a sudden she shows up in yesterday's Enterprise and you're going, well, what is all this then?
Yeah, you would have to eventually go back and watch them all.
All right, we're not going back. We're going forward to the next story. Wow, that's a great segue. I should use that one every single time, even though it makes no sense to use it other places.
And the first thing in this next story is looking back.
Darn it.
We need to slingshot around the sun one more time here. This past Halloween, it seems that everyone was posting pictures that showed a Spirit Halloween costume package with made-up costumes inside. Trek fans took this idea and ran with it. TrekMovie.com has listed some of their favorites. For instance, the old age Harry Kim costume, which you guessed it, is a Voyager era Starfleet uniform with a single pip, always an ensign.
Oh, Harry.
Or maybe you prefer the NX-01 decon chamber costume, a pair of shorts, and an included canister of gel.
No, that's actually the shorts they include are like long pants compared to what they were wearing.
Not the hot pants then. How about one of those who simply want to dress as a plain, simple tailor? The costume includes needle, thread, shears, what is it? Build your own costume.
Well, these are the accessories.
Okay. Chalk, an untraceable phaser, encrypted pad, and a thimble. And from the harsh section, an Alexander's dad costume that is just an empty package. Ooh.
Wow, burn. Just a sick burn.
There are more, and you can find a link to the article in the show notes for episode 127. Again, over at thetopicstrek.com. I think my favorite one that I saw was the one that was all like washed out on the cover. In fact, I thought the person taking a picture used a flash and it reflected off the plastic packaging.
Oh, yeah.
It was the J.J. Abrams costume where it was just a big lens flare.
That's not a Medusan. That's a lens flare.
I laughed so hard out loud when I saw that one.
All right. So let's move on to our next story. At New York Comic Con last month, in response to a question from a Trek fan, Alex Kurtzman said that there have been talks about bringing back live action Janeway. But that was all. The panel went on to the next question. Okay, you kind of left going, Well, when actress Kate Mulgrew was in Bloomington, Indiana a few weeks ago to visit the Catherine Janeway birthplace marker, she held a fan Q&A and the subject came up again. Mulgrew said that there seems to be some interest, but she had some specific conditions she laid out for Kurtzman. Quoting Mulgrew, and I will not do the voice, I said to Kurtzman, the writing is going to have to be absolutely exquisite. And as tight, I mean so tight, I want that language to just burst. And I want the story to be so tremendous and taut. I said, no languishing. I don't want peaks and valleys. I want a Janeway that everybody can say, that's what she's become. I'm with her. This is great, right? And I think some sort of extraordinary adventure, even greater than Voyager, even greater than the Delta Quadrant. Now, we all recall that Patrick Stewart had similar specific requests for his return to the role of Jean-Luc Picard. So is a Star Trek Janeway series right around the corner? Well, that's hard to say, but we'll keep you up to date if we hear anything.
I thought you said you weren't going to do the Janeway voice.
What?
You
Oh,
did
and
a
we've got,
great Janeway.
well, I would say that, no, this Kate Hepburn, but that's the
Yeah.
same thing, isn't it? We've got
Catherine
a
Egan.
comment here from listener
Yes.
Diane, recommending starting with, let's see. Oh, yes. Well, I clicked on that. It's a self-promotional plug in a way. That's a reference to my Star Trek Red Shirts video on YouTube.
She says, I highly recommend people start with this YouTube episode, Star Trek Red Shirts. You'll learn all you need to know. I got up to the part where it says, I highly recommend people start with this YouTube series. And I'm like, hey, she says, point them to our podcast.
Well, that's understood. That's clearly understood.
And I kept reading.
And Red Shirts will come up later in this episode, guaranteed.
All right. Also coming up is an auction from Prop Store. PropStore.com, one of the world's leading, this came from StarTrek.com. Prop Store, one of the world's leading entertainment memorabilia auctioneers, is in association with Paramount Consumer Productions and Experiences. And they announced today that the first ever Star Trek Picard Seasons 1 and 2 auction
Not
online.
Season 3, just 1 and 2.
Right. So for the first time ever, over 300 original costumes, props, set decorations, and behind-the-scenes memorabilia from Seasons 1 and 2 of the television series Star Trek Picard will be offered in this online auction. Collectors will have the opportunity to own authentic pieces of the Star Trek universe. Bidding begins at 12 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, November 15th, and concludes 2 weeks later on November 29th.
It's going during Thanksgiving. They're going to be doing this, huh?
Going to be like eBay. Everything's going to ramp up on Tuesday, the 29th. Highlights of the upcoming auction. There's many of them in here. They include things like 7 of 9's light up phaser rifle. If you've got a cool $8,000 to $12,000. The Romulan mother of all disruptors from season 2. Let's see. The Elnor stunt Romulan warrior costume with stunt Tankalank sword. I can't pronounce that.
That's easy for you to say.
Right. The Jean-Luc Picard stunt leather jacket costume with La Serena com badge from season 1. Let's see. What's the priciest thing on here? That might have been it at the top. It was the light up laser rifle. I thought I saw the picture. Yes. The Daj and Soji necklace from season 1. I thought the artwork was in there.
It's I just was past that one now. A Data's daughter framed painting.
Yes,
is that what you mean? With back turn from season 1, that's $6,000 to $8,000. One of these are $6,000 to $8,000. There's a recurring theme here of $6,000 to $8,000.
That's the estimated value.
Yes.
We didn't see that on the Star Trek cruise. They had that one aboard, so it'd be sad that it's now going to be gone. Unless there are replicas out there that they can bring for future cruises, no one will ever know. Each item, of course, comes with a certificate of authenticity signed by executive producer Alex Kurtzman, and additionally, there is a Leonard Nimoy personal contacts 645 camera equipment with photos from the collection of Leonard Nimoy that were donated by the Nimoy family. And 100% of those proceeds from that sale will be donated to donated by the Nimoy family in memory of Leonard Nimoy to support the UCLA Chronic Obstructive Pulmonary Diseases, COPD research program under Dr. John Belperio. So good on them for stepping that up. The Nimoy family has been funding Dr. Belperio's COPD research since Nimoy's death in 2015.
Indeed. So worthy cause there. Interesting that it's the camera and some photos as well. So it's a nice little.
After I'm gone, you can have my phone and whatever's on it.
Yeah. So it's what is the camera? And the photos are in the camera. You got to develop the film. Oh, it's 35 millimeter, and good luck trying to find a place that will.
Here's the old device I used to record podcasts on, and an SD card that might have some random stuff. That might be worth something. And
finally, in Vulcan, Alberta, Canada news, Vulcan's annual Star Trek convention is scheduled to take place July 28th through 30th. Chris Gauthier, the town of Vulcan's community service manager, wrote, quote, planning is maybe he can sound like Janeway. Planning is underway, and we are hoping to see higher traffic in 2023 than in previous years, with next year being the 30th anniversary of Vulcan.
30 years? How have we not been there yet?
I don't know, but we've got the dates right here for next year. But Counselor Lyle Magnuson, thank you, him asked, or her asked, if that means that Vulcan is now being organized for a different weekend than Spock Days.
Whoa, there's a conflict. I didn't know there was a Spock Days.
Yep, which is usually held the second weekend in June. This past June, the events were hosted together on the same weekend. Quote, yeah, we're talking about that, replied Kim Fath, the town's administrator. Mayor Tom Grant said it's too bad that the two events are set to be held on two separate weekends in 2023. I felt that it was successful to go back to a one-weekend event, he said, adding he knows the people who put on Klingon costumes for Vulcan enjoy participating in the Spock Days parade. Fath said that the main issue with having Spock Days and Vulcan on the same weekend was the availability of venues for both events.
Yeah, I'm thinking hotels might be a problem too.
But the question is it two separate, I mean, as far as places for people to stay, is it two separate groups of people that go to
yeah, that's
Days
true.
and Vulcan?
It's Star Trek fans or Star Trek fans. Yes.
I mean, they might pick one or the other, but I think they're probably comparable events.
I would think you'd want to separate them. You know, maximize the number of people that are coming. Because if you can't make it one weekend, you could always make it another one. And I'm going, that's really close to my class reunion weekend. I don't think I can do both in late July. But hey, I could still get up the Spock Days in June. Right. So I think you got a better chance. I think it makes more sense. I don't think they're going to lose a whole lot of people by separating them. Do you?
No, I mean, the local townsfolk are going to be there, and from the surrounding area, I'm sure will show up because, if they hold true to the other permutations of these two events, I mean, there's a lot of just general stuff that happens during them, barbecues and things like that. So, it's a good get together weekend, regardless of which one you choose. So I imagine a lot of local people say, yeah, let's do them both.
We're going to have to look at our Topicus Trek budget because we may only be able to send like one or two people to each event, but we can cover them both instead of all of us going to one event.
That's true. So did it give the actual
not for Spock Days?
Yeah, I'll have to look that one up, see when that one is being held.
They're still discussing it.
They are. Well, I'm getting to know Mayor Tom Grant really well. He has lots of opinions about things as far as this whole Trek business goes. All right. Now, that was a lot of stories we covered. We covered a lot of ground there with things from Emmy nominations to suggestions on how to get into watching Star Trek to things from Vulcan, Alberta, Canada. But we have links to 48 additional stories in the show notes for episode 127. That's right, Eric. Exactly. And these stories are broken out by movies and series and other categories that we have in there, including comics and toys, all sorts of stuff. You can find them over at thetopicstrek.com. So please go there. All right, now comes my favorite part of the show. And that's when I get to say, goodbye, Charlie.
I want to stay.
Oops, I think my finger slipped on that button there. Sorry about that.
You're a little too happy about it. You're trying to make sure he never comes back again. He sort of disappeared into the ether. I think you might have missed either way.
Yeah, it just went right through him. He's a tricky one. All right, it's time to now go out on our main mission with an appropriate sound effect. Sure, we'll go with that.
Communicator, that works.
All right, we are going to be talking about the latest 2 episodes of Star Trek Prodigy. So this is your spoiler alert that we will be talking about the the latest episode and the one previous to that right now on
We
The
don't get
Topic
to
is
pl-
Trek.
We don't get to play the spoiler alert?
Sure, go for it.
Done.
Oh, we got one. Okay. All right. I will begin with our first one, which is Star Trek Prodigy, Let Sleeping Borg Lie. Oh, I forgot to put so this is season 1, episode 12, I believe. Yeah, that
Okay,
sounds
12
right.
already?
Written by Deandra Pendleton Thompson. And this is Deandra Pendleton Thompson's first Star Trek script. Deandra has served as a writer's room assistant on Picard, as well as a writer's production assistant on Stranger Things. And so you're aware, a lot of times when you are going through the system to become a writer, that's one of the stages, is to be a writer's room assistant. So
Yep.
It's not like, oh, they were getting coffee and now they're writing for the show. No, you're a writer. You're just getting your apprenticing, if you will, to get where you need to be. All right. And it was directed by Olga Ulanova and Sung Shin. This
Those
is
sound like actual character names.
well, then they might end up there. Who knows?
They're cheating, kind of like Shax's home planet.
So this is Olga's third time directing Star Trek. The first 2 gigs were also for Prodigy. Ulanova has been a storyboard artist on, among other things, Prodigy, the Lego Ninjago movie, The Legend of Korra, and Green Lantern, the animated series. And this is Sung Shin's 6th time directing an episode of Prodigy. Like Ulanova, Sung Shin has been a storyboard artist for a number of series, including Young Justice, Batman, The Long Halloween, Scooby-Doo, The Sword and the Scoob, and the Guardians of the Galaxy TV series, an animated series, which I didn't even know existed. All right, mission briefing. This is where we're going to walk you through what happens in roughly the first half of the story. It's kind of mostly the setups of what happens in the second half is all the payoffs and the conflicts. So the crew of the Protostar is on the holodeck watching a visualization of Gwyn's last conversation with her father, the Diviner. He is detailing his plan to destroy the Federation by planting a weapon on the Protostar that will activate upon contact with a Starfleet vessel. Hologram Janeway has no knowledge of such a weapon, but Jankum points out that the ship's Protostar drive had also been wiped from the emergency training hologram's memory. Boy, that's a tough one to say. Emergency training hologram Janeway's memory. Zero orders the holodeck simulation to shut down when they notice the playback has reached the moment when the Medusan reveals her true form to the Diviner, driving him insane. Zero does not wish to harm anyone else. So this is rather upsetting to have a replay of that going on.
That, yeah.
Murph is still in a state of distress. Rock Talk believes the slime worm has a cold or is upset by the conversation that everyone is having about these events. The crew searches the ship for the living construct and eventually finds it under floor plating on the bridge, the last place you'd look. The weapons, because then you'd stop looking. The weapon consists of a series of nesting rings surrounding a crystalline core, and it kind of looks like what's behind me right now on screen. When Jankum fires a phaser at point-blank range, the weapon protects itself from being harmed by the blast. Dal reasons that if the crew can't destroy it, they'll need to find a way to shut it down. But before they can even begin to map out a plan, the Protostar comes face to face with a Borg cube.
Dun, dun, dun.
Hologram Janeway explains that the Borg assimilate every species they encounter into their collective. It says that they respond to any attack by adapting themselves until a weapon is useless against them. But Gwyn wonders if the Borg have come across any weapons like the living construct and whether they know of a way to disarm it.
Saw one on eBay.
Zero scans the cube and finds that although the ship is functioning, the Borg are dormant. Janeway continues to argue against the plan, but it briefs the crew on everything it knows about the Borg. As the Protostar flies through an opening in the cube and lands, Hologram Janeway says a neurolytic pathogen shut down the Borg's functions. It advises the crew that the best way to remain invisible to the Borg is to act harmless, but also urges them to quickly finish their work. And I think that's a good plan. On board the Dauntless, meanwhile, Vice Admiral Janeway, with a sigh of resignation, orders up a cup of tea from
I
the
love that.
replicator.
I love that.
She tells Ensign Essentia, voiced by Jamila Jamil, that it was an order from her doctor and she wants a second opinion. The two walk together to sick bay to check up on the humanoid they rescued from Tars Lamora, unaware that it is the Diviner. Tellarite Dr. Noum, voiced by Jason Alexander, is very pleased with himself over keeping the patient alive, but balks at the idea of trying to awaken an unknown species without knowledge of their physiology. Essentia suggests trying to replicate the bioserum that was in the patient's environmental suit. Janeway orders Noum to proceed with that tactic. All right, so we've set up that now we have the crew of the Protostar inside a Borg cube, always a good idea. And we have orders from Janeway to try to awaken the Diviner, although not being called that, obviously, by the crew of the Dauntless. So from there, the crew ventures out into the Borg cube, and Jenkins seems really, really enamored with everything going on in here.
He's an engineer. He likes the tech. So I can see that. He's not fully aware of what the Borg are capable of course.
Right, although it's pointed out he should just look up from hugging the console he's looking at, because there is a Borg drone right above him.
Yeah, and many others.
So they are on their way to essentially get to the data core, if you will, or the connection point of inside the Borg cube to try to find this information about suggestions on way to disable or destroy the Borg cube. But when they get there, Jankum starts looking for a way to interface with the...
They have to climb up there, which begs the question, how did all the other Borg get up to their alcoves on the other levels? There's got to be some sort of lift mechanism that they're not aware of.
Well, they just climb as well. But there's no way for Jankum to interact with the mechanism, because there's no console, there's no keyboard, there's not even a joystick. He said, I'd settle for a joystick.
Hello, computer.
And they realize that they're going to have to go into one of the Borg stations and actually connect in with the Borg, which sounds like an even worse idea than actually just going inside the Borg cube.
Yeah, again, they didn't realize. Janeway had told them, but I don't think they fully realized the danger that they're in. And Zero says, "I'll do it," because I'm a Medusan, and therefore, I honestly thought she would make them all crazy. And
I think she thought so as well.
Yeah, that's not quite what happens.
Right, because when she's inside, she's very surprised by the fact that they're fine.
Well, she's been part of a collective mind before. So says, I'm the best one suited for this. I know how to separate myself from that hive mind. But it didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah, I mean, she found herself overwhelmed by the experience of being part of a hive mind again, of a collective like that. And she got herself assimilated.
And turned green, because that's what the Borg do. Everything's green.
Or the Romulans, one or the other.
We did see, thanks to the wonders of CGI, we did see some different shaped Borg than we traditionally do. They weren't all like standard humanoid size, shape, and form.
Well, I noticed that one of the ones that comes out to try to capture the crew is a Tellarite Borg.
Very large Tellarite Borg.
Well, it's an adult. I mean, Jankum is just I don't remember how old he's supposed to be, but yeah, he's a young kid. He's a young kid.
Yeah, we don't know the aging of Tellarites, like how Vulcans age slower. But anyway, they got themselves into a pickle.
Right, because when Zero is connected with the Borg, the Borg start to wake up. And obviously that is a problem because they can't get Zero out. They're trying, but Zero is lost inside the Viculum, and she won't respond. They decide, well, we'll run and we'll come back for her later, which is, I'm not sure how much of a plan that is, but it's a plan that they have. They're going to run, and they end up getting caught. Everyone except for Gwyn gets caught. But it's weird because they are not immediately assimilated. They're taken to a location where they're kind of strapped into around this drum type thing. And I wasn't quite sure what the point of all that was. I mean, obviously the point was we have to delay them getting assimilated until they're rescued. Now I understand that. Somebody was also theorizing that since this is a show aimed at a younger audience, you can only make the Borg
so terrifying.
Yeah, so terrifying.
Well, you can also write that off as they might have needed time in their maturation chambers. Although, Echep and his crew were, were they fully functioning citizens of the collective, or were they still like Borg trainees?
I see. So they'd go look at a manual or something like that, or check some YouTube videos on how to assimilate somebody.
Well, maybe that's why they were not assimilated right away, is because they. Well, I always thought step one was get out the tubules and inject them with nanoprobes, and just that's step one of any Borg drone is, inject and away we go and let the process start going.
Right, because there was some, I forget whether it was Generations or one of the Borg episodes on Next Generation where a crewman is like goes around a corner and you swear like 30 seconds later he comes back and he's already Borgified.
Yeah.
And it seems that process seems to be going slower and slower and slower now.
The Borg have bureaucracy to deal with. Did you sign your papers, Wisnowski?
It's now a week-long seminar that gets you to be Borgified.
I'm watching you, 006. Always watching.
So they have to fend off. One note here is when they're fending off the Borg trying to not get captured, and that fails. Did you notice that little Easter egg that Gwyn turns her that weapon, that piece of jewelry that turns the weapons, to turn into a batleth, which I thought, well, that's an interesting choice of.
How does she know what a batleth is?
Well, it's weird because she doesn't know what a Borg is, but she knows a Klingon weapon. However, I think the premise here is that while we think of that quadrant as very distant, it's not distant from everything. Mm-hmm. And they were dealing with worlds coming and going, and it's possible that there are even some Klingons that were part of the prisoners on Taj Lamora. So perhaps that's how she learned what that was. Someone was commenting that they felt it was unrealistic that Gwyn wouldn't know who the Borg are. And my feeling was, all right, even if the diviner knew who the Borg were, you don't just sit around saying, okay, here's alien species number one, and his, it somehow would have to come up in the conversation, or they would have to be attacked by the Borg, one or the other. You just don't start rattling off every single type of species in the known, galaxy.
They eventually did find a way to adapt against her weapon as well.
Right. They shoot with phasers, and at first, Dallas, hey, what's the big deal? Took one down right away, and they all shoot their phasers, and nope, they've adapted already. They just come marching towards them.
Which, wait a minute, haven't they dealt with phasers for like the last 30 years?
Well, that brings up an interesting question about, how, on what deep level, I think, are the Borg connected? Is all the information that every Borg cube has disseminated to all the other Borg cubes in total? and everyone in the entire collective has all the information.
That was my understanding of how a hive mind works, is everybody knows everything about everything else, or at least they work together to a common goal. But apparently someone didn't fill out their TPS cover sheets and missed
That's
the
the problem.
memo.
Well, next Tuesday, the information is coming in next Tuesday to them about, what happens with that. Yeah, so they do manage to get through to Zero, who realizes that she's now part of a new collective, and that collective is more powerful than this connection to the Borg, and she breaks free and
Just
is
as she's about to stab Dahl in the eye.
Jankum, I believe she was going to.
Yeah,
Who's-
that's
who's-
right. Jankum. Yep.
Who was pleading for no haircut? I don't think it was a haircut that Zero was going for at that point.
And the spinny thing. There could have been a Floby. I don't know.
I suppose. But they're able to get off the ship. However, the bad news is that the Borg did analyze not only the protostar, which is concerning, but the living construct, and concluded that there is no way to destroy it and there's no way to remove it from the ship.
But they want it.
Yes, they want it. They wanted to use it against, they wanted to help them assimilate other species. And I'm trying to figure out, by destroying them, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out for you, but maybe they think it's just going to weaken them somehow, which I guess it would.
It's technology. It's a weapon. They assimilate. That's what they do.
If you're Borg, it's what you do. It's a commercial or something. Meanwhile, on the Dauntless, the Diviner awakens and just sits up and, so he's awake now, and the crew of the Dauntless still has no clue that he is the Diviner. And we're going to find out in the next episode, it gets even muckier at that point.
Yeah, he's not all there.
Which we kind of figured, the assumption was he wouldn't be there because he got several minutes worth of that blast.
I'm surprised he's coherent at all. That with that much exposure, his mind should have been pretty much wiped.
Right.
Maybe he's stronger than a Vulcan or whatever.
Yeah, because I had the impression that, from things that we saw, like Spock, for a couple of seconds was exposed, and that was it. He was out there for quite a while. So I don't know. Any interesting things that you found out you gleaned out of this episode, or things you want to talk about in particular?
Unfortunately, I did not have a chance to make copious notes like I usually do on either of these. So not on this one, that comes to mind. I enjoyed it from the level of they seem to be taking a wonderful turn with the story arc in that not only do we realize the ship is a weapon, they attacked the radio listening post, but now we've seen the weapon, we know where it is, and we know that it can't be uninstalled, turned off, or whatever. So this is getting to be a really good story arc from the weapon standpoint. I'm enjoying that. It's lending a new, they discover we really can't go to Starfleet without destroying Starfleet. So, and we're being labeled as thieves, and I forget if it's in this episode or the next one where Janeway says this is now no longer a rescue mission. It's a manhunt or words to that effect. So they've really, it's not like you could just say, here's your ship back. They can't do that. It's like they're getting into a no-win scenario.
Right. Absolutely. They can't. I mean, yeah, it's not, you don't want to hand the protostar back to, Vice Admiral Janeway going, here you go, have fun.
Yeah. You can't give it back to the Diviner because he's clearly lost it and probably wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. So
one thing I noticed in this episode, which probably other people noticed before, that when they're watching the holographic playback of Gwyn talking to the Diviner, which I'm confused about how that video is like, who created that Right?
Yeah, who was running the camera on that thing?
Because you go beyond some stuff, the Gwyn didn't have like all the information on, so it can't just be her memories that she fed in. I don't know, but you have Zero in the scene where the Zero watching, right? And Zero has legs, and then as Zero moves in, when she yells stop to the holodeck, the legs are gone, and I noticed that the legs go up into the body.
Oh,
So they go up into the cylinder, and I thought, well, yeah, there's really not a lot else in there. I mean, there's got to be some sort of mechanics of some kind, but connections for the arms and so forth. But yeah, this, if they collapse up like a telescope, yeah, you can put the legs in there.
did Zero get new hands from the Borg? Is that what I seem to recall?
In the episode, and I didn't think to look to see if they still have them after the episode is over in the next episode. So I'll have to go back and look at that.
Okay.
Because Jacob makes a comment that she get an upgrade, and when he realizes he was going to be assimilated, I can skip the upgrade. I'm fine. Just let me out of here. No problem. All right. So all that said, it's time to rate this first one. This is the cleverly titled "Let Sleeping Borg Lie."
What's our rating system for this one?
I mean, logically, it should be Borg, right?
Or yeah, cubes.
Let's go with Borgs.
Okay, Borgs it is. They're disposable.
All right. Let's see. I will go first on this one. I enjoyed the episode, but I felt like it was hampered by the fact that I felt they had to tone the Borg down a bit. Have the discussion about why wasn't the crew assimilated immediately. And even though there are probably reasons for it in the bigger scheme of how to present the show, I felt like that hurt it. And the Borg have become so much in every permutation of Star Trek now that you don't want to cheapen the Borg. And I felt like, okay, this wasn't really getting them back to this big level again. It was kind of still having them in a weakened state where some kids can defeat them.
They didn't assimilate right away. They were a very tame Borg.
So I'm going to give this one. I'm going to give this one a 7.5.
It almost reminded me of Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3, where we're just gonna shoot at robots now because we don't want to make this too violent. We don't want to see people die. Never mind Anakin and all the younglings. But back to Star Trek. 7.5, you say? I'm going to give it an 8, slightly higher. I liked the overarching storyline. I'm willing to put the tame Borg aside, but I could certainly appreciate your opinion that they were a little light.
Now, before we move on to the next episode, I was reading an article that was talking about some theories about this episode and its relationship to the Borg in general and connections to Voyager and to Picard. And the theory, if I'm understanding it correctly, theory is that since this show takes place after Voyager, then when the protostar comes, when the protostar comes in contact with this Borg cube, Janeway mentions that they are all under this neurogenic, what is it? The neurolytic pathogen, which is what Janeway used in Endgame of Voyager to knock out the Borg.
All right. Good job, writers. Good job.
Now, the theory goes on to say that Zero wakes up the Borg and we see the local Borg ship getting woken up, but perhaps other Borg cubes also woke up as a result of this. And the theory continues that Zero puts the Borgs back in a dormant state, and this is the artifact. That this is the Borg cube that the Romulans find, and there are Romulans later in this season of Prodigy, that the Romulans find and take, after probably a bit of a battle because it was damaged, as the artifact that we see in Picard.
Oh, wow. That's a heck of a red string to put between the pins.
Right. I mean, I think that the first part, because it stood out to me right away that the neurolytic pathogen part of it said, well, wait a minute, that's what Janeway used. So
right.
To me, that part was, okay, yeah, I follow you there. I'm not sure if I can follow, and I might even follow through Zero is not just woken up one cube.
Right.
But is it the artifact? That one, it starts to get a little mushy, I think, at that point. But I'd be happy to be proven wrong, because I thought it'd be a great little Easter egg type of weaving things together. But we'd have to see if that actually happens. I'm not convinced just from what we see that that's what would happen. All right. So that said, we're going to move on to our second episode, and Chuck is going to tell us about that one.
Well, if you had episode 12, I must have episode 13 from season 1. All the World's a Stage, written by Aaron J. Weltke. We gave a short biography on Aaron in episode 106. So, well, for us, that's almost a year ago. It is directed by Andrew L. Schmidt, and Andrew is an animation director on Prodigy. This is his first time directing an episode of the series. His long list of film credits include work on films such as The Iron Giant, Monsters, Inc. Hey, we just did Roz. Finding Nemo, Ratatouille, The Incredibles, and Toy Story 3. He's also a director on Guillermo del Toro's award-winning trilogy series, Tales of Arcadia, Troll Hunters. So here's your mission briefing from that episode. The Diviner is conscious and speaking with Vice Admiral Janeway. The Vau Nakat is only able to recall a few pieces of information. He identifies an image of Chakotay and says that he was taken prisoner. He sees glimpses of Gwyn, the decimated surface of Solum, and he knows he must stop some incursion. I picture like McCoy. Murderers! Assassins!
Exactly.
As his thoughts are so jumbled, he can't figure out what any of that means. Dr. Gnome, I'm saying that right?
Well, I think it's Noam.
Yes, I know him.
Yeah, he's right there.
Dr. Gnome sedates the Diviner. Shut up and go back to sleep. Ensign Essentia reports that a single escape pod from the destroyed relay station, CR-721, has been located. But the pod is empty. Barnus Frex was rescued by an unidentified vessel. The Dauntless is tracking that ship's warp signature. Meanwhile, the Protostar is in orbit around a planet that has sent out a distress signal. We learn that there has been no progress made in neutralizing the living construct weapon. In fact, through her brief connection to the Borg, Zero learned that even opening a hail to Starfleet could trigger the infection. Wow, we thought internet viruses were bad.
This is terrible.
Briefing the crew on planet, Hologram Janeway says that a subspace distortion field is hampering sensors, but there are definitely life signs on the surface. Despite protests from Jankum, the crew beams down, of course. All except Rock Talk, who is watching over Murph, who's still fighting COVID, apparently. Something's up with Murph and not doing well. On the surface, the team runs into two of the inhabitants, Sewell Oo and James T. The pair identify the Protostar crew as being from Starflight. This is where it gets comical, people. And they say the distress signal was something named the Call of Ensan. I was having a hard time keeping a straight face with this episode. Everything these humanoids say is a corrupted version of wording that would have been used by the original crew of the Enterprise, such as live logs and proper. But it doesn't stop here. They, along with other inhabitants, have built a huge dwelling that roughly mimics the shape of the iconic ship, and they call it New Enterprise. So these so-called Enterprisians even practice what could best be called Kirk Fu fighting techniques. Yes, the double fist punch is back. It lives on in this civilization, and so does boxing your opponent's ears. That's good stuff, people. It's good stuff. The inhabitants, this is almost, I was almost going for lower decks here. It's like, all right,
It's very lower decks.
who let the lower decks writers on the Prodigy staff? Yeah. The inhabitants present a play that they refer to as The Logs, and it outlines the story of the Enterprise coming to their planet 100 years ago. It infers that the crew discovered the inhabitants were in danger but could not interfere. The I'm trying to massacre Prime Directive into something, but it's not coming right now. Then one red-shirted crew member, of course, Ensign, volunteered to go down to the planet. When he arrived, Ensign offered a way of peace, but also brought a warning. The inhabitants were not to go near a certain wooded area, lest they be cursed by the gallows. And with his dying breath, he vowed that Starflight would come and rid the inhabitants of the gallows. Dahl orders the crew back to the Protostar, feeling like these are just people living a lie. And of course, he feels the same. It's like, these people, they're wearing like cheesy costumes and, they're not Starfleet. And then you realize very quickly, neither are we.
Right.
But just then, a young Enterprisian, Cadet Huura, this is brilliant stuff, returns from the woods. She's coughing and weak and collapses in Dahl's arms. She has signs of an infection on her face. She collapses and she claims to have seen the gallows. And more than that, she's now infected Dahl with the curse.
Mm-hmm. So they're not leaving. They're not going anywhere at this point because, well, they don't know what's happened to Dahl.
Nope.
They take him to what would be the sick bay on a ship. They would probably call it a sick bay as well, or some variant of that, the stick bay. And
Commander Spork. No, what was Spock's name in this world?
Sprock.
Sprock. That's what it was. I was close. I just thought you got to mess it up even further than I did.
And so Dr. Boons is taking care of them.
And
yeah,
course,
I'm definitely just getting.
The speaking, the characters were speaking. There was a bad William Shatner stilted dialogue going on from James T. There was, Mr. Sprock, his one line, most illogical.
And I don't know if you noticed, but when I forget where it happens, but they're going someplace and Sulu says, my.
My. You just wanted to scream at the screen and say, no, the lines are wrong.
It's not quite right.
This had a hint of the Omega Glory from TOS, the Epobnista thing. Like, you haven't watched it in so long, you don't even know what the right words are anymore or what they mean. So that came back to mind, and I thought, okay, good. If that's what they were aiming for, they hit the deep cut on that one.
Yeah, because they're going for something that this is something that's been passed down from generation to generation for around 100 years, and everything's gotten a little. First of all, probably Ensign, who we get identified later in another deep cut of who this person actually is, but he's bringing concepts since they're a pre-warp society that they're having trouble grasping. So I think that especially that initial generation that actually dealt with the ensign, didn't really understand every word he said and get the gist of the words.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the beginning of the bastardization of everything that they said.
Well, and languages evolve over time. We're
Mhm.
well aware of that. That the words you say today, if you watch like Atlas Shrugged, you'll get that as well. This also had a feeling of a piece of the action from TOS as well.
Right, which is initially what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
When we saw that first shot, where we saw the big wide shot of everybody in the green uniforms, it just had that kind of, well, now they've discovered this technology. They're basing their entire civilization on this, on the medical tricorder type of thing.
Yeah, we've seen this storyline hit, but this was a different take on it. Because in order to heal Dahl and Lahura, what was her name again? I can't remember.
Hurrah. Hurrah.
Uhura, yeah.
And I noticed that she was, and interesting enough, I noticed she was cadet. It's almost like, okay, we're going to tie this somehow to Strange New Worlds because
Right.
it's Cadet Uhura in this one.
Yeah. Well, maybe they didn't get quite all the historical documentaries right. There, how's that for a Galaxy Quest reference?
Sure.
There's another tie-in. This could be, interpreted as, a Galaxy Quest thing too. It's like, we've mimicked our society after yours. Like, that was a show, right?
Yeah, except that I mean, we find out that Dr. Boons says that they're aware that they're not Starfleet, and all this kind of stuff. To them, it's more a case of having the sense of hope and believing in the things that the Federation believes in, right?
Yeah,
And those goals.
if you believe, that's good enough. And that kind of brings Dahl around as well. It's like, hey, you know what? I think we can fix this if we believe as well. But they need to find the source of this poisoning, this problem, to be able to heal both of them. So Jankum and Gwyn and Rock beams down with EV suits. They go into the cave of the gallows. And what do we find?
Well, first of all, we find these big glowing things, which that's the thing that would be the big glowing eyes.
That's what they had in their play too. They
Right.
had these glowing spheres.
But it turns out that those are parts of
the nacelles, and the gallows is another misinterpreted word for the Galileo space shuttle.
Mm-hmm.
Aha! That's when I went. That's when I snapped and went, good writing. This totally. I had no idea what was coming. What was in this cave making these growling noises? It's leaking. Warp plasma from the nacelles it poisoned the water, and it's having a reaction to a cave full of dilithium crystals. So what happens when you do that? You get all kinds of subspace interferences, so you can't beam in or communicate out. So Jankum says, I'm going to go into the shuttle, which is teetering on the edge of this cliff, about to fall into a lake, which will blow the whole hillside sky high. And
they're urging him not to do it. And I love what he said, because I felt like, yeah, he's got to do this, because if we come across one more thing Pog can't fix, then Pog can't call himself an engineer, because essentially he's given over everything to Rock Talk, because he's going, I can't figure out how to do this. I don't know what that is. And he's supposed to be able to do it.
Yeah, good pickup. I did not make that connection right away. So thank you. And he's listening to the ensign's last. So ensign is clearly an indicator of the person's rank that came from the Enterprise. And he's listening to the playback of his last log entry. And you get a little more clarification of what happened. And it wasn't too far off from their original story that, he came down, there was non-interference thing going on. And he says, I thought I was coming here to save these people. And it turns out they saved me. So it was.
I'm guessing that because your first thought is, well, why would the Enterprise leave knowing that the shuttle was gone? And my guess is that they performed a search and they couldn't find the ship because there was
It was in that
subspace interference, and they just searched as much of the planet as they could, and they just couldn't find the shuttle.
Right.
That's my guess.
I thought now that they know the source of the problem, because Jankum was able to communicate with the Galileo's communicator out of this cave, even
Because it
though
used duotronics. Wow, that was a sweet callback too. It uses duotronics.
yeah, and he was able to tell Zero what the issue was, and Zero just goes punch, punch, punch. Now I can synthesize an antidote. Psst. Like that was really fast.
And the reaction to them getting the antidote was pretty fast too. Dallas like, oh, I'm fine now.
We're on the clock here. I'm trying to remember where we took the story after that.
So to backtrack a bit, the ensign is Ensign Garavik, and Ensign Garavik was the crew member on the original series who was the son of the Captain Garavik, and Kirk had been on the ship and had been attacked by that monster that had the sickly sweet smell.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we've
Obsession.
seen actually Ensign Garavik in one episode. And that is who, because he identifies himself in the log here, that is who crashes in the shuttle. On the
Wow,
planet. So
someone was studying their canon on this one.
And apparently, and I had forgotten this, but I was reading on Memory Alpha in relation to this episode. And by the way, Memory Alpha, I love you. You're a great resource, but you've got to get your act together on the Prodigy episodes. The recaps are they're not to the usual standards. I don't know. I'm beginning to feel like my show notes might end up being something I just transfer over there. But I would have to go back and look, but apparently at one point in the original series, the Galileo becomes Galileo 2. It's on the apparently it's on the side of the Galileo. And so this is like, okay, we've now got a window here. We lose the Galileo, and that's how we lose the Galileo. So, nice way of like, sewing a bunch of stuff together without having the fan theory about the Borg and everything. You just got to do it on screen, and there it is.
And the crew is still left wondering, what are we supposed to do? Because we can't contact Starfleet. We've got a stolen ship. They're going to come after us. They don't know that the Diviner is aboard the Dauntless. So there's still that unknown. They have to find. They can't come in contact with another Starfleet ship.
Well,
they need to find like a Romulan ship and say, hey, or maybe a Tellarite ship. Well, Tellarites are part of the Federation. How do you get a third party to convey your story?
Well, I thought it was interesting at the end of the episode, Dallas saying, if we can't take the ship to Starfleet, we'll find another way without the protostar.
Yeah.
So maybe their solution is, well, we're just going to park the protostar someplace where we can
fly into a sun. I don't know.
Yeah, something's got to be able to kill it, or if it explodes. Yeah, that's it. You make a star a member of the Federation, and then you take the protostar there. Perfect.
I think the ending of this episode was also intriguing too. You find out that Murph may not have been sick, just going through some sort of metamorphosis.
Yeah. Did you say metamorphosis?
I did say that.
TM.
I'm still misinterpreting the lyrics from the logs here.
And I think it was Janeway and hologram Janeway's. No, I think it was Dal saying that apparently the rules on Second Contact are kind of fuzzy.
I had a second. That was the episode 1 of Lower Decks season 1, Second Contact. I'm like, oh, did we just reference Lower Decks too?
I think they've kind of referenced Lower Decks by doing this episode, pretty much outright. The interesting thing is that watching this by itself, you'd say, oh, this is a really silly show. Why are they doing this? but it came after very intense episodes. And I think they're doing that. Okay, they all can't be like
Yeah.
dire consequences. This is all doom and gloom, or just and ends in these downers of, well, we can't get to Starfleet. We can't become members of the Federation. So this one really was more of this is kind of what Star Trek is about, having hope in hopeless situations and those type of things, and have something that's a bit lighter and a bit more uplifting ultimately.
Yeah, the thread is still there. I mean, they still reference it. The ship is a weapon. The diviner is on board this other, and they're coming after. So it wasn't completely whitewashed as, hey, let's have a comical, funny episode.
Right.
But it was. You're right. This was much lighter than the last one.
And I think it's on purpose, just to not have everything be very monotone and high stakes. Although I suppose the Enterpriseians might feel it was high stakes for them. They were going to be killed by the gallows if nothing was done. But
I can just imagine what the Enterpriseians would have thought of the Bork. Did you watch the last episode? Oh yes, those Bork were funny.
Alrighty then. I also got a kick out of the fact that the Enterpriseians beam up with Dahl because he needs to go down to the planet and he doesn't have any crew left. And Janeway says, well, as soon as you hit, the atmosphere, I'm going to be knocked out. So you won't even have that. And he brings them up and they look at all the consoles and stuff after they gawk at the fact they're in space and look at the consoles and they're like, well,
that was intriguing.
Yeah, they're pressing stuff and it's just like they don't understand it all. So Dahl says, you got anything else? And so Janeway has him call up the mid 23rd century bridge.
Constellation class. And it transforms the bridge, or at least a good chunk of it, to effectively the bridge of the Enterprise. So they go, oh, this I know, which almost sounded like...
She said, remap all the controls to match what these things would be.
Half the buttons don't do anything because there's no direct mapping.
So presumably, the console over, the left of the captain's chair on the Protostar has now been remapped to be at the nav station, that type of stuff.
I got a original Jurassic Park moment. I know this. This is Unix.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she didn't say this is Unix, fortunately. But the transporter worked and everything, so they were fine getting everybody off the planet.
And they were able to, go into the cave, get everybody out at the last second. So just as the gallows fell into the pool.
Yeah, poor Galileo.
We hardly knew you. Low mileage.
Yeah, exactly.
Rough life.
You should have a little like carving the side Spock was here, type of on it someplace. But
all right. What are we rating this on? Dare I ask?
God, we have so many. I don't know. I came up with the last one. What do you got what do you want to do for this one?
We could rate it on the those fuzzy creatures, the terribles. I'm gonna keep going with this.
Yeah. You're having too much fun with this episode. All right, so 1 to 10 terribles, huh? I'm gonna. I got.
You went first last time. We should reverse order.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I forgot that I went last. Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun watching this, and I think that the story arc is still there. I'm going with a solid 9 on this one. There were some wonderful deep cuts that I didn't even pick up till you mentioned. I'm like, wow, okay. Ensign and who he really was, and filling in that whole storyline. I just thought it was, somebody went down to the planet, crashed in a bad spot, and we have another kind of like lower decks bird marriage thing going on.
He's no peanut hamper.
We're not going back to that. He's no peanut hamper. There's a t-shirt for you. So yeah, solid 9 on this one.
All righty. Before I give my ratings, I'm going to see, we got another comment in here. Let's see.
The Enterpriseians have the ensign's communicator, which is not infected. Maybe they could use it.
Ah, I see what you're saying.
we can call Starflight.
Oh, that brings up an interesting point that they showed Enson's uniform and his phaser. Those
Yep.
were on a wall in sickbay because that's where you want to put it, apparently.
Well,
But-
it's a good place to memorialize dead people.
Because it's a red shirt, that's what you put in sickbay. It was strange because it was this weird hybrid. It was a Strange New Worlds type uniform,
Yeah.
but it had an original series Delta shield on it.
With the insignia, the
Right, the raised insignia on like the fabric background and the raised rim on it.
like the number 6, icon. You know what I'm talking about.
And which is supposed to be like a gear or something. And it had an original series phaser. So it was kind of this trying to meld the two things together.
It's a little known uniform between the two because yeah, they're always changing uniforms according to Boimler.
So what about if we just make a patch instead of this solid metal thing? What do you think about that? Is that going to work for you?
Did you get the what did you think? Yeah, what did you think about the boots with the flaps on them? It's like, nah, those will never go.
All right, but to my rating, I'm going to go with you. I'm rating this one a 9 as well. I've watched it a couple of times now, going through to do up notes and so forth. And there's some stuff that's still, I don't know. I chuckle every time we get to the doll running into the first two Enterprisians, and you have James T.
And Sewell, ooh.
Well,
my.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
Well done. More of those people. The lower decks people need to go visit this planet. That would be just too much.
Well, those rules about third contact. Yeah, it's going to be a swing by mission. You know,
the Cerritos does a swing by.
What are they talking about? I have no idea. All right, so it's time to come back from main mission with an appropriate sound effect.
How about the subterranean elevator? Poor kitty.
And our warp speed roundtable. Now, this is just a poser. It's based off of an article I was starting to read, and it's linked in the show notes. But just going to go between two characters. I'm asking, who was the better anti-hero, do you feel, in Star Trek? Garak or Q?
Wow. Where do you come up with these?
So Garak, on the one hand, being simple Taylor, as referenced earlier in this episode, but really was a spy and worked with the Federation, but really remained a Cardassian and, did things that, as we know, that needed to be done, as Sisko had him do. He said, well, this is what you were expecting me to do, wasn't it? And Sisko did expect him to kill the Romulan. Or you have Q, who constantly would put the crew of the Enterprise in danger, threatening basically all of humanity in some cases, ending existence, that type of thing. And then he gets all warm and fuzzy with Jean-Luc at the end of season 2 of Picard, and they're hugging and so forth. And so who do you think is the better anti-hero, Chuck?
I'm going to go with Garak on this one. I think he was more mysterious. Just when you think you're finding things out, you're not really sure of what you think you found out. So we kind of took that journey with Julian, Bashir, and you're still left with, who is this guy at the end? Whereas Q, they unfolded more of his backstory, what it meant to be a Q, even the Q who wanted to end his life. There was some depth to that character, and the more you understood him, the less mysterious and ominous he became. Yes, he's omnipotent and all powerful, and like you said, could end all of humanity in a snap of the finger. I liked the character. Don't get me wrong. I loved him through, all the way through the end of the TNG series. Not Best of Both Worlds. It's all good things. Sorry, I had a mental block there. And even into Picard when he comes back. But I just thought Garrick was a better recurring character that fit into the fabric of that story, whereas Q seemed more like a guest appearance here and there just to mix things up. And yes, we're going to have to deal with the consequences of that for years to come. But Garrick's got my vote on this one.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that you can define anti-hero in many ways, but I felt with him, if he went with you on something, the fact that you might go, why is he doing that? I'm not sure I'm really wanting him to be siding with me on this or coming along with me.
Yeah, you weren't sure of the decision one way or the other. I was like, yeah, he's going to stab me in the back or rescue me? I'm not sure how this is going to go down.
If he says you're right, does that mean you're wrong? Type of thing. So he always kept you on your toes. And while Q kept Picard and the crew of the Enterprise on their toes, I felt like it was mostly for his amusement.
Right.
Or he felt like he was teaching them a lesson or, something that it wasn't revealing him as this mysterious character. So
Garrick might be the victim of multiple writer syndrome. He just never was established.
He's a dessert topping. He's a floor wax. He's both. Come on. There we go. All right. That's what we think about this.
Did you give... Oh, I'm sorry. I was expecting a rating on this one. Like, no, this isn't the part of the show where we give ratings.
No, I know we could, but we're going to Garrick's accused. How about that? But what do you think? If you have a thought on who you think is the better anti-hero, we'll drop a note over on a Facebook page, facebook.com/The Topic is Trek, and we'd love to hear your opinion on it. But for right now, it's time to refill the dilithium chamber and warp on out of here. You can find me, Clinton, over at Comedy Forecast, all one word with the number 4.com. Just wrapped up the big musical event, so you can listen to that all the way through. Just go to comedyforecast.com/2022 and you'll get to the first episode of the musical if you want to do it that way. And who speaks for you guys? He says questioningly.
I'll speak for me and Craig. You can find us over at Tack Your Mama Podcasts. No, wait.
Still, those Enterpriseans get nothing right.
I'm going to stop now. You can find us by searching for Technorama Podcast. It's over at chuckchat.com, but there's other places you'll find it on the internet. Many of the same places you find Clinton. But yeah, we do our show every Sunday night. Just nerd out with some news and reviews and all over the place. Got some great stories from the past and even a historical segment. I still think we're the only podcast that celebrates nuclear physicists. Nobel Prize laureates. That's what it was.
They're a dime a dozen. All right. Time to hit the theme, boys.
Is it really?
It is really.
Do we have to ask Charlie X about this one?
No. No. If you like the show, please be sure to tell a friend about it and subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on Twitter at The Topic is Trek, visit our Facebook page, or visit thetopicistrek.com. Until next time, on behalf of Chuck, Craig, and myself, I'm Clinton, thanking you for listening. And as we always say here on The Topic is Trek, don't put on
the plaid skirt. Plaid skirt.
There you go. Live log and proper.
That was hard thinking. Something.
Yeah, I can do that on the fly.
It's starting to come to me though.
Oh, one thing that I mentioned in a tweet, and the Hageman brothers and the writer of this episode liked it, was responding to someone who today it's like sub-commander so-and-so Romulan. So he posts a lot of stuff about Star Trek, and he posted, gee, I wish that I had this kind of the original series lighting on myself all the time because my life would be so dramatic. And I said, did you notice the homage to that in today's episode of Prodigy? Because when Jankum Pog is backing away from the going on the mission to investigate the gallows, he hides behind a drum, and suddenly out of no place, it's just light across his eyes.
Oh, it hit me, but I didn't quite get it. Yeah, that's great. The dramatic light
The
eyes.
dramatic lighting, that pin lighting.
All right, we are going to stop the stream. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
And thank you, Diane, and thank you for your comments. And yeah, it's a good thought about the communicator. I don't know if they took it, but it would be interesting because technically it's not part of the protostar, but it can communicate with Starfleet. I don't know.
What's the range on a hand communicator? I thought it was, if your ship is in orbit, but you're not going to get somebody from 13 light years away.
No, but if you, I don't know, it depends. I mean, if you're inside the ship, because, Dahl makes the point of saying that they've learned that they can't even open a hail to Starfleet. So I'm not sure if it's the device they use or the fact that they're on the ship and they use it. Anyway.
Interesting. All righty. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye, everybody.